On behalf of Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple and all my colleagues at Teamwork Arts, welcome to JLF's Brave New World.
Thank
With
you,
over
sir.
2.7 million views, we'd like to thank all our viewers and collaborators for their continued support. As we lead into our 100th episode next week, we would love to hear from you as to how JLF's Brave New World has impacted your worldview. We look forward to receiving your videos on contact@teamworkarts.com or via WhatsApp on +91 989 1155107 by the end of the week. If you'd like to watch some of our recent sessions, including those with David Olusoga, Yasmin Khan, Brian Keenan, Salil Tripathi, Margaret Atwood, Oran Pamuk, Tarun Teliani, Anita Nair, Ashok Ferry, and so many others, you can catch these on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest, or on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. Our official radio partner is Red FM, Bajate Raho. Our session today is A Secret History of Compassion. Paul Zacharia in conversation with Anupama Raju. Iconic Malayalam writer Paul Zacharia presents his first English novel, A Secret History of Compassion. Zacharia's latest novel examines his relationship with the left and the vocabulary of social justice. In conversation with writer Anupama Raju, who has translated some of his recent stories, Zacharia speaks of bilinguality, the pursuit of pure storytelling, and the method behind his literary madness. Paul Zacharia has published over 50 works of fiction and non-fiction in Malayalam, and his body of literary works includes short stories, novellas, travelogues, screenplays, essays, columns, and children's books. His English novel, A Secret History of Compassion, was published this year. He is the recipient of numerous awards, including accolades from the Indian Academy of Literature. He is also a distinguished fellow of the Academy of Literature in Kerala. Anupama Raju is a poet, literary journalist, and translator. She is the author of Nine, a book of poems, and her work has been featured in several poetry anthologies and journals. Please do remember to comment and ask questions by typing it into the comment section below. And in case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you could find us on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. And of course, if any of the three of us fall off, just hang in there and we'll be right back on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, The Secret History of Compassion, Paul Zacharia in conversation with Anupama Raju.
Thank you so much, Sanjoy, for that very, very warm welcome and introduction. And sir, good evening. We are finally meeting over Zoom.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yes, sign of the times, I guess.
Yeah.
So, right, for the benefit of our audience joining us virtually, I must say that here is an iconic writer, as Sanjoy rightly put it, and very fondly known as Zacharia in Kerala, and to the rest of the world, Mr. Paul Zacharia. But to me, you will always be Sir, because I started reading your works as a student of literature. So it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be in conversation with you today.
Thanks a lot, Anupama, and it's been a pleasure actually, and it's wonderful that we could converse and get our ideas across. Yeah, very good.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes. So The Secret History of Compassion. The title is engaging, and we are not going to spend much time on that because we also have very little time. But I think it is a correct assumption that this is a wonderful exploration into contemporary times and the very strange age that we all inhabit. There, I think it would be safe for me to use the word satire. And as a genre, I think that is something that you have always pursued across your literary career, whether it was in your earlier short fiction or in your novellas, or of course this particular novel. Now, when we talk about satire, there is always this element of criticism. And how do you find it? What do you have to say when you talk about this novel as a satirical look at society?
You see, Anupama, I wasn't writing a satirical novel.
Okay.
If you look at it, honestly, I was
Okay.
writing a novel with four characters in it: two men, one woman, and one dog, or vice versa. One woman, two men, and one dog. You can put it like that.
Yeah.
And these are people who were looking at the world in a very different way, or from what I imagined, or what I thought. I imagined that I am presenting these characters as people who are seeing the world differently. And in what way different, I think they simply were unable to cope with reality as it appears to all of us, and they sort of went around reality, played games with reality, and created their own world. So in the process of doing that, as you said, there are satirical elements in it, as which comes in because uh, we are dealing with, in today's world, we are dealing with dictatorships. We are dealing with invasions of privacy, the forces of capitalism at work, moving into every, pore of your body and into your everything. So you do have a, so they were also looking at that. And so, when I wrote, I was, I suppose I handled, and religion, more than anything else, how religion creeps into your life as a, almost as an evil force. How all the god men and god women, and I mean, you don't have to go into the entire mechanism of religion, but how it creeps in on you, how it can distort your mind, how it can brainwash you, how it can make you filled with hate for other people. This is,
Right.
which is really not the function of religion. But
Totally.
and this is why. So when I looked at these things, there was no point in, I thought, in repeating the same philosophical jargon about how bad they are. So the only way I could do it was to sort of laugh at them, and
Right.
I think I did that. So
Yes, you did it,
that's what
and I think you also made us laugh in the process,
I
because
hope so.
there is
Humor
a
is
lot
very
of.
hard to achieve. Yeah.
But every time you do achieve it, and I can say this with confidence, because the element of wit and irony and dark humor is something that has always been present in your work, is something that I've noticed. To the extent that it borders on the absurd. And when I say absurd, I say it with great fondness. And the absurdity and what do I say, the strangeness of the entire universe that your characters inhabit. Whether it is Lord Spider, or whether it is Pillai, or whether it is the snake and the bat and the various creatures that come into play in the novel. So, how would you respond to the adjective absurd? Because is that something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I think I am very comfortable with that, because I think that's one way of, see, when reality gets to be very, very hard, not in terms of hardness, that hardness of economic hardness or any, but when reality is something that your heart doesn't accept, when your free mind doesn't accept, when you see that reality is becoming oppressive as a system. And
Right.
so these people were, you know, confronting reality with absurdity. Uh, that's what I thought they were doing that, because that's the way they were trying to understand reality, and keep their sanity intact. That seems to be the only way. when religion and politics and all the rest of it is in a kind of ballistic mood and is aggressive and against you, then the only way that we can keep saying is to maybe to become absurd, because otherwise we will go mad. So absurdity is, I think, way of confronting reality, of what I would say deconstructing reality. You can say. I mean, if you use a philosophical or whatever literary term, maybe that's one way of looking at it. Like many people, I mean, lots and lots of writers and painters have done it. Like Salvador Dali and all the rest of it. They all
Right.
looking for the absurd. So it's a very tricky thing to do, and I don't know, because many people, lots and lots of people don't like it.
Mm.
So it's a because I am in a manner of speaking, I am attacking the reality they are used to and they have accepted, and you cannot blame them because everybody can't be going around fighting reality. And in fact, almost very few people are mad enough to do that. So I find it upsets a lot of people. But this was the only way I could see when I was writing a full-fledged novel for the first time, because all the novels I have written in Malayalam are small ones. There are
Right.
about 5 or 6 of them. So when I was
Yes.
writing a largest novel, I think it's about 400 and odd pages or so, nearly 500 pages. So I thought this should try and meet the issue face to face, and uh, and create a narrative around that. So that is, so absurdity is something that I personally accept, and I have enjoyed absurdity in my reading, in my viewing, and and in a way, comedy is absurd. Totally, all
Yeah.
the finest and greatest comedy is
Yes.
absurd. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, I mean, thanks to the early translations done by Katha, done by by East West, whether it was Geeta Krishnamurti, AJ Thomas.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a flavor of we've got to enjoy all those translations as well. And of course, now because of your current book, I think a larger audience will get to enjoy it directly.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yes, of course. Now, in terms of the themes, you did mention, I think anyone who reads the book can definitely find those references and those observations on politics, on religion, and also I think certain themes which are probably underrepresented or underexplored, like sexuality, for instance. At least in India. I mean, I'm not saying that the writers are not exploring it, but I'm sure that a lot more could be done. What do you have to say about that?
You see, I think I have explored sexuality a little more than I would have been able to do in Malayalam, for example. Maybe we
Okay.
don't. Malayalam is not even equipped with a simple vocabulary for that.
Hmm.
So when you speak about sexuality in Malayalam, people normally take refuge in Sanskritized kind of a jargon or
Mm-hmm.
a kind of collection
Mm-hmm.
of words. So in English, I think because sexuality has been handled right from the history of English literature. I mean, right from the beginning of that. So English, and later on you have from USA and from UK, you have people who have not been abashed to talk about or write about sexuality, even to go in for explicit descriptions of sexuality. People have been doing, the writers have been doing that, and painters have been doing that. So I am not saying that my plan was to establish that kind of a thing in my novel, but I thought you can leave sexuality out of any description of life. This was the only
Hmm.
thing that affected me as a writer. I mean, you
Hmm.
can't keep it as a secret or a guilty secret or pretend that it doesn't exist and pretend that it doesn't enter your thoughts or feelings or anything. So then it's a matter of how far do you go, how much do you talk about it, how much do you make your characters discuss it or react to it. So that's a balance that I have to create. I think I created that balance, and within that, I allowed sexuality to have full play in the lives of all these three characters, except the dog, maybe. I mean, he wasn't really, he was in fact contemptuous of all these sexual operations. So,
Yeah.
see, for these three people, I think let go of and they speak about it. Why, how each one had problems, how each one, I mean, it's a kind of confessional where they say that, look, it's not a guilty confession or anything. It is just plain truth speaking, and laying their feelings bare. So that way, sexuality has come in quite a lot, and maybe it has. I don't know. I'm not sure that that's the kind of thing that you can do in a book aimed at Indian readers. I am not sure, because we do have a different kind of, the Indian educated Indian class have a different kind of moral view of life, and now maybe, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't fit in with that. Maybe it does. Anyway, I had to do it, and I did it. That's
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you had to do what you had to do.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's it.
Okay. So, I mean, going back to one particular pattern I have noticed in your work, that is something that I've seen repeatedly occurring, especially since you mentioned, religion, and you mentioned absurdity, you mentioned sexuality, or even sensuality. Um, the concept of God, often what I have seen, and even in our recent offline discussions about, in some of your earlier stories, God is often female, and I mean, interestingly, not a goddess, but simply a she, right? And this she often dances or plays the guitar or sings or wears lovely anklets, and sometimes even is a cabaret artist in some of the earlier or even a cat in one of the earlier stories I recall. How does I mean, it's quite interesting and quite charming, I should say, the way you approached and created that. How did that happen?
See, Anupama, I think I got out of a Catholic setup. I was born into a Catholic family, and I had to get out of it. So getting out of a Catholic system is almost like getting out of the Communist Party, because you get brainwashed very early, and it is very hard to pull that thing out and become a free human being. So
Right.
in that process, I had a lot of problems about God, the idea of God that was instilled into me. I had to get out of that. So my struggle with discovering that there is no God,
Hmm.
that's what sort of took me on that path. There could be, I am sure, the universe is there, and the universe is exerting forces on us, etc., etc. That's a different matter. So this struggle with God, because God was put into my head at a particular point of my life, I
Hmm.
think that has expressed itself in some of the things that you say, and I personally believe that God is a free software. You can do anything with it. You can take it, and
Interesting.
yeah, you can. In fact, God is a free software for everybody. It's not only for an unbeliever like me, but look at the way God has been, manipulated. He has been exploited. He has been the way they have, created him, recreated him, and put him into all kinds of situations. He has been a killer down the history of the world. God has killed in the name of God. We have shed the maximum quantity of blood,
Hmm.
bloodletting. So this is a very peculiar problem,
Yeah.
and so I have played with God because he is available. I mean, I can make him anything, and he is supposed to be that. Even according to any religion, he is supposed
Totally.
to be a pliable creature. You can
Totally.
pray to him, and grants you his your wishes, and he can punish you. He can do all kinds of things. So I handle God with that idea that I am free. He is also free. So this is how I work.
I like the terms that you used. Free software, very much in line with the absurd reality of these days, the virtual reality. In fact, I mean, just before we started, we were talking about how all of us are now meeting on Zoom, and maybe your next book can be the virtual history of compassion, because
Yeah, it
perhaps
could be. Yeah.
perhaps that's where we are
Compassion,
today.
yeah. Compassion in the days of COVID, because COVID might go on for another 2 years. Yeah, it could.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Mhm.
mean,
Paul, while Anupama comes back, I want to continue on this
Yes. Yeah.
trajectory that you talked about in terms of God and take that forward a little bit. You
Yes,
know,
Sanjay.
many
Yeah.
everyone talks about how you have to have some kind of religion or have to have some kind of faith and belief to take you forward to your next aim or objective. And yet, in many ways, you shun that. You move away from that, and you use God in many ways as a sort of way to say that no, this is only one aspect, and beyond that, there's much more in most of your work. Will you just tell us a little bit about that before Anupama comes back?
I think, Sanjay, this is see, my view, and it's a very, very tentative view. It's that people do need to believe in something. People do need to, to depend on something, to look to something for the final value system, etc. And if when religions propose that we are that provider, the provider of this final value system, this ideal system of life, etc., etc. And if you believe in us, we will repay you with wealth, prosperity, good things happening. So you can't blame people for that. The problem is, Sanjay, when you become a slave, to your religion, when you allow the people who manipulate God and manipulate the idea of God and manipulate religion to manipulate you into taking political decisions or in social decisions which are filled with hate, filled with anger, filled with aggressiveness, filled with greed, or whatever. So I think every man, personally, so I struggle to get the other aspect, answering your question by little more the same detail. It, I think to get out of religion, it takes a lot of, unless it happens to you miraculously one day that you are able to drop that baggage and become free. Otherwise, I personally, my experience was it took me years of reading and searching to make sure that I am on the right path, especially in history. And
Anupama, back to you. I think you're back. So let
mhm,
yes, Sanjoy, I'm back. Thank you.
yeah.
So, well, a sign of the times, I must say, internet and connectivity and bandwidth, right?
Yeah, that,
So, to come back to what we were talking about in the novel, and and
that,
also continuing the vein that Sanjoy talked about,
yeah.
the if we were to talk about the way you treat some of these subjects and some of the themes in your novel, uh, for instance, the act of writing itself,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to use a very academic term, but something like metafiction, or where actually the writers are talking about the various tools and the various processes that they go through, and in that context, would you consider this as a beginning of something, or what was fascinating for you in this process of writing this novel? Why did you choose to bring in those literary, preoccupations?
I think, Anupama, the literary preoccupations were were inevitable in that plot, actually, because one man is a writer. The hero of the novel, Spider, He is a writer of popular fiction who is trying to write an essay on compassion.
Yes.
The man who helps him to write the essay, because he can't write an essay, is a hangman, is an executioner who is interested in writing stories.
Yeah.
And he wants help from the writer, to
Yeah.
advice from the writer. So when these two people are interacting, there is inevitably they go into the business of writing, into the business of when one of them is telling a story, the other one is interrupting him, asking questions which are related to the plot, questions related to the character, and pointing out stuff, etc., etc. So there are two writers. One is an aspiring writer, one is a practicing writer. So
Correct.
when these two are getting together, they are discussing the art of writing also, if not really as a philosophic discussion, but they discuss. And Spider's wife Rosie, whom I call a freelancing philosopher, she is also, finally it is she who completes the essay
Yeah.
in her own way, so she also has ideas about how to go about writing. So these three people together have been talking about writing, because they are actually, the whole novel, as you know, is
It's
about
just
writing an essay.
correct. Correct.
And the name of the essay is A Secret History.
Secret history of compassion. Exactly. So I wouldn't want to give away too much, sir, because we also want everyone to go buy the book.
Yeah, I
And,
hope so. Yeah, that would be very nice if
yeah.
at least 1 or 2 copies are sold. That'll be wonderful.
Yes, that would be. I think we all secretly,
Yeah.
wish for that. Okay. The even in this, while we talk about Lord Spider and Rosie and Pillai and all of them, the way they interfere with each other, the way they nag each other and irritate each other, the entire process, it was both hilarious and entertaining. And I think also in places, those illustrations just do wonders for the book. The,
Yeah.
I think they really bring out the absurdity of the whole thing, and that
Yes.
the weirdness that I talked about in the beginning. How did you feel when you saw the sketches for the first time?
When I saw the sketches,
Yes.
we worked a lot on the sketches, but she had Priya had the exact the idea of them. I think she read the novel carefully, and she got into the spirit of the novel right in the
Yeah.
beginning, right in the
Right.
beginning. And so the things that she gave us, there we only had to make small changes here there
Yes.
to get to the final thing. And the way she portrayed Jesus, for example, as a
Mm.
flying sannyasi, that was a very
Yeah.
beautiful way of he's almost like a sannyasi Superman flying
Correct.
through the air. So things like that, it's a absolutely a
Yeah.
gift of of imagination, and a genius kind of in illustrating a. It was beautiful.
Yes. Yes. I mean, overall, I think on the whole, it kind of just lent a lot of beauty to
It
the
helped. Yeah.
beauty to the because the whole engagement, the literary philosophical engagement,
Yeah.
I think was made more beautiful. I mean, for the benefit of everyone, I don't know how much all of you will get to see this. This is just a very small glimpse
Yeah.
uh, into Priya Kurian's
That's
work,
right. Yeah.
but the rest you can find out if you go buy the book. So please do buy the book. um, but in terms of the essay, which also lends its title to the book, A Secret History of Compassion, there are, I think, there are a lot of interesting turns of phrases, lots of for instance, is God a reliable factor with regard to compassion? How do we know she has an adding interest in the cutting edge of the subject? You know, the whole, who would think of the term cutting edge to describe something like this? So I thought some of those elements were really interesting. How much time did you spend writing this? I
I
mean, it's
think
an
I
inevitable
must,
question.
yeah, it's an inevitable question. It took me a long time, but the actual process of writing, because in between there were years I didn't write at all, and I didn't attend to this novel at all. I was traveling, doing various other things.
Hmm.
So I think it must have taken me about more than 2 years of actual, writing to complete it. But it took
Okay.
me, in total, it took me about, I think, if you count it from the day I began and the day I ended, maybe about 10 years.
10 years, yes.
Yeah.
I yeah, I remember, sir. I mean, way back. And anyway, wonderful. So we
Okay.
have a few minutes left before the audience interaction, but I would like to conclude with this question.
Yeah.
Because the times that we are in, right? And as they say, the new normal, or you know. But I'm more interested in the future and the new possible, because certainly there is a world beyond this. As tragic and depressing the current situation is, I think there is
Yeah.
also a lot of, I think there is a lot of possibility. And you are also someone who writes a lot of travel logs. You are also someone who engages in travel, and you continue to write those columns, and you continue to write those. So, how do you now, approach that in the current world?
Yeah. I think, Anupama, I see this as a kind of no-go situation. I don't know if anybody, forget about me, anybody would be able to travel away, travel to distant lands in the next couple of years or even more. I have no idea. I am glad I traveled whatever I did. I did whatever I could before 2020. Or otherwise, I wouldn't have seen any part of the world at all the way it looks. So it could be a very bleak future right now, but maybe I'm sure there has to be a life after COVID, and uh, unless we all, the mankind dies out with this, which is also not a possibility. I mean, which is a possibility. So in a way, well, it can happen if one of those presidents or prime ministers press the nuclear button. That also can put us to an end. So, so hopefully that hopefully this is a better way of dying than dying in a nuclear conflagration. So traveling, I think, is going to be very hard. I personally see it as, because there were a few more places I wish to visit. Maybe things will be better. I'm hoping for the best.
Oh no, you will go to all those places, believe
Thank
me.
you. Very good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a great note to segue into our
Yes. Yes.
audience
Yes.
interaction, because I'm told
Yeah.
there are
Time is up.
questions coming in.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is from Arun, who asks, "How did you fix on the title A Secret History of Compassion? And also, why are the characters named in that way? For example, Lord Spider."
I think he hasn't he hasn't read the book maybe in detail. He must have glanced through it only, because the Secret History of Compassion is the title of the essay that these two people are writing. The novel begins with the starting of the essay, and it ends with almost with the conclusion of the essay. So, and the title of the essay is now the caption of the title of the novel. And the characters are named thus because Lord Spider is the pseudonym that the writer uses. He has 5 pseudonyms, and this is one of the pseudonyms he is using. This is his favorite pseudonym. So Lord
Mhm.
Spider, that's the name that I have given to him in this in my novel, his favorite, the character's favorite pseudonym. And Pillai, he explains why his name is Pillai and why it is Lazarus Lambodara Pillai, a mixture of Hindu Christian thing from South Kerala. See, where
Right,
a particular community has
correct.
both Hindus and Christians practicing in the same family, so they
Yes.
mix up names.
Yeah.
So these things are actually explained in the novel itself. And it may not be fair to go into the details because well, it
No.
is yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. So, Ria asks, when did you first think of writing a novel in English?
Yeah, I was 10 years back when I precisely to yeah 10 years back when I wanted to write a largish novel, as I said, unlike the small ones that I've been writing in Malayalam. That's the time, and then I decided. I said, okay, then if I am going to do that, I might as
Hmm.
well write it in English, which is a language I like, which I've
Hmm.
been practicing for, which has been in my life for nearly 50 years or more. And
Hmm.
so I thought I should, why not use that? It's a language I really love, and
Hmm.
my imagination, my knowledge, my my understanding of the world, all that has come through my reading in English. So I thought it's only fair. I should, as a writer, I should attempt to use English and see what happens. And so that's how I took that decision.
Right, right. So before we move into the next question, if I could just quickly check with you, since you said it is a language that you love, and as a student of English literature, I must ask you this. So when you started out, and because you also taught
Language.
you taught the language.
I was a
So
very poor teacher because I couldn't
I
speak
see.
English, but I taught. Even today, I can't speak English, but I manage. That's all. Yeah.
Ah, right, right. No, but it would have been great to be a student anyway. The next question, sir. Sanya asks, how would you best describe your literary journey? Where does it stem from?
Where
Does it stem from?
it stems from?
Where does it stem from? Yeah, your literary journey.
It stems from my. I think it stems from my childhood. From
Mm,
my literary journey starts with the books my father had at home. He was a reader. He was a farmer,
mm,
and but he had a lot of books at home, which was very rare.
yes.
Especially, my I think my imagination was molded by books like The Thousand and One Nights and
Mm,
fairy tales, Grimm's fairy tales and Andersen's fairy tales and things like that, which were not illustrated books, by the way, like today's children have, but text
mm,
only.
mm,
So that is how I started out, and and these were all translated, by the way, into Malayalam. There was no English book because my father couldn't read English. There were only Malayalam, and that is what set me. I became a reader. I became a bookworm, and my literary journey is one of a bookworm turning into a writer. That is in very simple terms. I have been able to. I've been looking at it again and again, and this is the only way I can see it. I was a bookworm. I still am a bookworm, and I became a writer.
great. We have
But
many more questions. I must
yeah.
I must tell you, which is great. So Agastya asks, what are your thoughts on translations? Do you think with translation you lose the essence of the story?
Translation is, according to me, you know that lots of my stories, and we are also working on a translation. So it's a compromise between two meanings, or what the original is there, but how do you put across the original into another language, uh, which is not in conflict with the original's meaning, and but carries the same beauty, or whatever the strengths and beauties of the original. So you create a path in between, so which could be called a compromise, that and so the translation might not carry all the nuances that the original had, Marcus said,
Hmm.
his famous words, that his translator made his novel, his English translator, he said she made the novel better
Hmm.
than the original. I mean, he was praising her. So
Yes.
it could happen that way too. So at the end of the day, but translation is very important in a country like India, because we have so many languages here, 23, 24 languages, And what I write in Malayalam, or my fellow writers in Tamil, in Tamil Nadu, what they write, if we have to read each other, there isn't any other way but to have translation. So actually, to put to keep India together, we need translation. But unfortunately, it is not. There is no governmental mechanism or cultural mechanism to keep translations happening interlanguage, not only into English, but from Indian language to Indian language. It's not happening. But
Yeah.
I tell you one footnote to this. You see, Malayalam became what it is today, or in the at the turn of the not in the mid 50s, there was a flood of translations into Malayalam from all the world classics, from all the world literatures, and from Bengali and from Tamil and from Odia and all this. And I think we are today, Malayalam is a vibrant language because of these translations. I have no doubt about it. People like me grew up reading these translations, and I am what I am because of these translations. So I am very convinced that it's a very important cultural process.
I think that's a grand tribute to translations as a process.
Very
Thank you.
important.
Okay. So uh, we have a friend who's asking the question, AJ Thomas, sir. Hello, AJ, please, sir. Would you comment why you treat God, Satan, and the so called villain, Stalin, in a light, playful manner?
No, I think all villains should be seen playfully. Otherwise, they will make life miserable for us. But so I think Satan has never been. So what I am trying to establish is that Satan is not a villain, and my I use a story from of my friend who is now in a very bad situation with illness. I use his story. It's called Satan's brush.
Yes.
So I use that story to illustrate how why Satan is not an evil person, but he's just somebody. He's a very harmless person. Like maybe he happens to be a little fat and hairy. That's the only thing, and he has a bad. Yeah, his mouth. He has a foul smell. Yeah.
Okay.
So my theory is that it's a foul smell that gave him a bad name, and he's not, essentially a bad man. He's a kind man.
Hmm.
So, no, this is, I'm joking, but you can't take these seriously. I mean, because these have been, I mean, I can't, because Satan and God, etc., have been discussed and, taken to pieces ad infinitum down the last so many centuries, ever since people started, being aware of these possibilities.
Right.
So I wouldn't really want to look at it in the same way as what has been happening. So and AJT knows very well. AJ, Thomas knows very well what because being a he also is was born a Catholic, so he knows exactly what Satan and God means to a Catholic. So the sooner you put them out of your life, the better. This is
I will conclude with one last question because I think we are almost at the end. I've been
yeah.
given the cue. Latika Sinha asks, are there any poets who have written in English who you find spirited and
Because
I
I
must
didn't
say spirited and inspiring? Are there any poets who have written in English who you find spirited and inspiring?
inspiring.
I haven't planted this question, I must say, in my defense.
It's very. You see, I don't read much poetry. I have read your poems for that this one, and I
Yes.
find them spirited and inspiring. But I know there are wonderful poets practicing in English in India,
Yeah.
and many of them
Okay.
like Jeet and I don't recall the names,
Of
all
course.
these names, but
Yeah.
they are see Surendran,
So,
for example. Of course,
yeah.
unfortunately, they are all Malayalis, so
Sorry.
they
Sorry to interrupt, sir, but I've been told that our time is up.
time is
But it's been such a delight. It's been such a delight talking to you and listening to you. And
up.
thank you to everyone, and of course to the JLF
Thanks
team,
everybody.
for
Thanks Joy and thanks Anupama. This is
Namika,
wonderful.
Sanjoy, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul Zacharia. Thank you, Anupam Raju. I think I'll be doing people a disservice if I don't quote one line from your latest book. And this is an exchange between Spider and the scientist. And says, "Are you a self-made Marxist or man-made?" Oh, I think I'm scientifically constituted Marxist. The scientist says, "I'm homemade." It's this is so quintessential Paul Zacharia in many ways. So do go and pick up the book. It's really you will chuckle. I think at every page there's something that will make you a smile and chuckle because it's been done in such a clever way. And I would have loved for Anupama to ask Paul about Marxism as well, but perhaps that's for a second conversation at some point in time. Thank you both. That was absolutely
Thanks, Sanjay.
fascinating, a fabulous conversation. Thank you all for listening and sending in your questions. And of course, do hope you're going to log on for the next session, which is going to be at 8:30. And this is Ian McEwan, Machines Like Me, in conversation with Marcus du Sautoy. Man Booker Prize winner Ian McEwan's Machine Like Me is an exploration into an alternative history in which the UK lost the Falklands War. McEwan discusses his latest novel and asks whether a robo can understand human emotions or whether we humans lack understanding. This is at 8:30 p.m. See you back soon. Thank you to our radio partners, Red FM, Bajate Raho.